Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the April 17th, 2025 Finance and Administration Committee meeting. My name is Jim Spear, I'm the chair. Mike Salmonson is the vice chair. Mike Gardini is a member of this committee. Tonight we have with us, as always, Borough Manager Maggie Dobbs, Assistant Manager Emily Pisano, and joining us is Planning Commission member Todd Bressi, whom we'll get to in short order. Okay, so let's start with the approval of March minutes. Anyone want to make a motion?
So moved.
I will second.
Has everyone had a chance to review the March minutes? All right, all in favor of approving the March minutes? That's 3-0, approved of the March minutes. Treasurer's report, budget versus actual. So, anything you'd like to tell us about this month?
Sure, just a couple of quick things. So if you look at the budget numbers, we're mostly on par for where we should be at the end of the first quarter. A couple things haven't hit the budget yet, or the accounts I should say. So you'll see that in terms of the revenues for our taxes and our sewer and solid waste funds, that all did come in at the end of the month, and so did get posted to our account. So you'll see that in next month's report, those numbers. So that pretty much gives us the bulk of our income for the year comes in by the end of the first discount period for taxes. So just about all of those have come in. So those didn't hit the books before the end of March. So you'll see that in next month's. The other thing is with the Sabine rent deposits and all of the expenditures for Sabine, that's also reported to us quarterly from Yentis, so we don't have that yet showing up on the report for this month. But otherwise, everything looks pretty good. Public Works is kind of stocking up on a couple of things early because we don't know what's going to go on with some of the tariffs. So we are, you might see some of those numbers creeping up from where they might normally be this time of year. We're just kind of stocking up on things that we know we're going to need down the line just to avoid any sort of price increases a little bit later this year. So we're kind of hedging our bets a little bit and stocking up now. But other than that, everything looks in good order.
That's smart. Can I ask, what is zoning hearing board fees that we pay, the borough pays? Do you happen to know what those are?
Yeah, so whenever we get a zoning hearing board application, they pay a flat fee.
Yeah.
And then we cover all of the other expenses. So that fee goes towards offsetting the cost of those hearings. There are some fees that the applicant is responsible to pay. There are some fees that we're not able to pass on to the applicants. So those fees would include the solicitor fees, legal advertising fees, the sending of the public notice, so all of the letters that go out, you know, we're up to 69 cents per letter, and court reporter fees. So the court reporter charges for an appearance fee, and then we purchase the transcripts. So the applicant pays that $1,500 towards all of those fees, and then the borough covers everything over that amount.
Okay. I see.
So you'll see it show up as an expenditure, but then you'll also see in the revenue side, we do collect the fees for zoning hearing boards.
Oh, so is some of this that is listed here, is this a hard number for us, or does this get offset by some of their fees?
It gets offset by some of the fees.
Okay, great. Any other questions from anybody? Okay. Let's move on to our, wait a minute, is this right? Okay, yeah, sure. Our presentation item, and that's you, Todd. We have Todd Bressi in tonight because this committee, Finance and Administration, is the point committee for the recodification of our zoning code. And we've agreed to receive regular reports, and Todd is the point man on the Planning Commission. So here's where it all happens. This is your first time here with us, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming out at 6 in the evening. not really sure where to start off on this, but you want to give us an introduction about where we
Sure.
are?
I'd be happy to. It's all right if I sit down and address you that way.
Yeah, please.
Well, first of all, I'm not sure if I can say this on behalf of the commission, but certainly on behalf of myself as a member, thank you for inviting me here. And I think it's really important for the commission and its work to have interaction with council in a very fluid way, and appearing on a committee and being able to talk to a committee is invaluable. So I encourage you all to continue this practice for all matters that come to the planning commission, to invite us to come to this or any other appropriate committee. We really, really, really appreciate that. You know, I've talked about that for a long time. I'm not sure how much you have been briefed about this yet. And I realized I wanted to print some off and I forgot, but Michael Galdini, about a month ago, Councilmember Galdini, wrote a very useful memo called Recodification Process, which is a good outline of where we are and what we're doing. This process, this project is one of the projects that Council identified as a priority for the Planning Commission about 11 months ago, in May. We presented a range of projects to Council, and Council prioritized several of them, and this was one of them. The purpose of this project is to basically reorganize the zoning code. It's basically a sleek ship with lots of barnacles on it. And it's very hard for folks to find what they need to find, particularly folks who are actually like property owners, to find what they can do with their property. And so we felt the Planning Commission felt it would be a good idea to do what we call a policy neutral rewrite of the code, so that it would be organized in a more legible way. Policy neutral means we are not trying to slip in new ideas or new policies, but we're really just trying to organize it for clarity's sake. Inevitably, there will be things that will be new. And so what I think will happen is when we get to the point where we identify things like that, for example, there may be definitions lacking that need to be added. We would flag those and say, this is a new thing, so that you're totally aware of, you know, what's been reorganized and what's new. But the intent is not to have this be a process of adding new policy. It will be a good chassis, so to speak, another sleek ship, whatever analogy you want to use, to add on new policies that we're like concurrently working on, but that's separate from this. This is just a reorganization of the code. So currently, I've been in the lead on this from the Planning Commission and have most months been briefing them on the progress of work. We did have early on in the process a meeting with staff. Kevin, I believe the solicitor, was involved, and we sort of got everyone's views on just generally what they thought needed to happen for the code to work better. Kevin, of course, has also, knows where there's inconsistencies and conflicts that need to be fixed as well. Up till now, mostly Michael and I have been working pretty closely on it. We've kind of been sharing ideas and developing drafts and we're trying to sort out both structure but also what kinds of presentations like tables or narratives are the most legible way of presenting things. However, the circle is widening, which is a good thing. Tomorrow, Maggie, the borough manager, has organized a meeting where we'll bring in Montgomery County Planning Commission staff into a larger conversation about where we are and how we can all as a team move the project forward. And so I think at that meeting tomorrow, we'll probably catch the MCPC staff up on things, but also talk about some of the more substantive issues that we feel we need to solve, and also talk about Montgomery County Planning Commission staff's role in this, which I think is a good topic to talk with you about tonight, like how you see them involved in this. Just skimming through Michael's notes here. I'm not sure there's anything more in the notes. I might ask Councilmember Gardini, is there anything process-wise that you would like to add?
No, I think you covered kind of like the general workflow. You know, like if there's a bucket of things that need to be kind of elevated, then that gets kind of, again, put in its own bucket so that we can see, you know, what were things that were flagged for us to be aware of versus what things are just kind of like a structural reorganization. And then I think the goal was to be able to link up with a council committee so that we can have these discussions at council meetings, so that we can be briefed throughout the process, so that once it gets, you know, like, once it proceeds and is heading towards council, then we can have a review at the committee, and then council has the benefit of having us kind of tracked it at public meetings throughout the process. So I think that
So
was...
when we're done with the draft, there will be a choice point for council. I mean, it could potentially be a draft which is adopted, right, as it is. But there will be a few, there will be a few things for council to consider. So, as I said, there may be little things like things that need to be added, you know, because they were missing. There may also be, and there ought to be really, a conversation about whether there are aspects of the zoning code that might better live in the subdivision and land development ordinance, particularly design-related things. For the reason that the zoning is a much more rigid tool, and the subdivision and land development ordinance can be a more flexible tool when it comes to that sort of thing. We have a lot of very specific kind of design considerations in our code. So whether those live in zoning, or whether those live in SALDO or in some other form, is a healthy conversation to have in terms of how applicants interact with our processes. I think one of the things we'll find over the years, we've added a lot of conditional use processes, which, as you know, is a very cumbersome process. It requires a public hearing, so that's expensive for applicants. Council may want to consider whether or not the processes we currently manage that way, maybe they could just be folded into the regular code or managed in a different way to expedite, you know, land development. What things really need to be conditional uses. So I think there will be a couple of topics like that this process will elicit when it gets to a resting point that are really good things for council to consider. So when you get it, I think it'll just kind of precipitate further conversation about what we do we add things, but I think it's good for you to have that kind of baseline draft so you can really look at it and we can have those conversations. As I'm sure you know, Montgomery County Planning Commission is our contracted planning consultant who is able to assist in many ways, and this is independently of the County Planning Commission's role in writing review letters for land developments. That is a separate role they have. But we've also hired, the borough's also hired them to assist us as a planning consultant on any of the planning matters we are working on. I think they're about halfway through their 3-year contract right now. I think the beginning of last year, we entered into a 3-year contract with them. So they're able to help us with this. And so one of the conversation points we might have is what is the best way to use that resource in this process. I'll share my thought about it, but again, I think it's a good conversation. I think that first of all, we have a new person from the Montgomery County Planning Commission working with us. I've not met him yet, but he began this month. I think was his April when he began. It was his first meeting with the Planning Commission, so he's still getting to know the borough, and he'll be with us tomorrow. And what I kind of have in mind now is that really I think it is us here, it is the council members, it is the staff, it is Kevin, who know how this ordinance works and doesn't work, and that, I mean how the code works and doesn't work. And that I think we really ought to be at the forefront of working on this, but I think MCPC could be part of the team tasked with certain things, rather than just handing it all over to them. What I fear is that because they don't know Narberth, and there's a new planner who doesn't know our code, there could be a lot of errors introduced.
Or over-eagerness.
Well, I didn't think of it that way, but I think I agree with you. I think based on, it could be possible for them to stick to the policy neutral aspect of this. But I do think there are certain things where their kind of, they're just sort of ability to spend time working on it could be really helpful. Mm-hmm. So for example, one of the tasks is to can move all of the definitions that relate just to the two types of land uses into one place. Like what's a store, what's a school, whatever, And I think, one thought is to move them either into a main definition section or actually move them to the chapter of the ordinance that is about land use, so that they're easy to find. Mm-hmm. Those all have to be gathered up. They have to be organized alphabetically. They have to make sure the terms are consistent throughout the code, and then inevitably that is a place where we'll probably find gaps where certain things aren't defined. We may not have a definition for like a professional office or what have you. I think that's a place where, that's an immediate task where they could be really helpful. I think that another potential task is we have non-conforming sections of the code related to non-conformities in various places: non-conforming uses, non-conforming lots. I think there's 4 different places. I can't remember them all. We've begun to consolidate them, but that might be a good project for them to take that chunk of the code and organize the non-conforming uses and help us identify where there's conflicts or gaps that we need to address. Michael, my council member Galdini, introduced the idea that all of the aspects of the code that are related to how to do measurements, like here's how you measure building height, or here's how you measure the size of a facade, or I don't know, maybe you have another example, but those ought to be consolidated in one place in the code according to our outline, so that if you want to know how to do that, or how do you measure a roof pitch, that's all in one place, like definitions are all in one place. That's something they could do. So I kind of feel like what we could do immediately with Montgomery County Planning Commission is sort of divvy up the tasks among us, and there might be some tasks that are really good for them to do, and that will help them acclimate the new planner to our code, and they'll be able to work on something productive while they're actually also learning about the process and the code. And as time goes on, they could take on more and more of the work. But and I think that'll be an important thing to talk about tomorrow, Maggie. I think that is probably a big agenda item, is to figure out how to fold Adam. We have a planner at the Montgomery County Planning Commission named Adam, and we can share that. So planner Adam, as opposed to chair Adam, how to fold planner Adam into this process. But I'll stop because it's a good time to get your feedback on that.
Do you sort of envision maybe I should preface this with a concern and then my thought, sort of the non-substantive, what I'll call the recodification test, which happens fairly often in various codes. You see it, because codes get gummy, I guess, for lack of a better word, over time. Right? They get changed, they not all at the same time, and they get put, things ends up in the wrong place.
I call them Frankenstein ordinances.
Yeah.
Where you take all the different amendments and then you end up with things that sometimes don't always align properly.
They're not easy to find, or they're, you end up, as you said, in contrary definitions and things like that. In my mind, that part should all be sort of fairly non-controversial and sort of separately tracked in some way from the more substantive potential changes. I don't know whether it's like parallel tracks. I mean, ultimately, they all have to end up in one organic document, but just for purposes of sort of, I mean, people are already talking about, is it true that we're fast tracking, code changes so that we can build, 12-story buildings next to the train station? And, I sort of want to be able to say, first thing we're focusing on is just cleaning it up. We have heard repeatedly from everybody that the code is hard to work with, and creates barriers to entry and barriers to conclusion. So I guess I'm trying to just think out loud in terms of process, how much we can sort of just keep the codification piece a baby unto itself. Maybe we can't, but.
Well, that's the goal. I think so, like in the process workflow, it's specified that if there's direction needed on things, then the direction, that's the bucket, right? When I said
Right.
bucket earlier,
Yeah.
you put those things in a bucket, and then they get kind of like flagged and brought up.
And brought to us.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Councilmember, I personally don't see that problem. I will concede that it may be very hard to explain that to the public. But for the, when I sit down and work on this, it's a pretty clear mission. We're just
Yeah.
trying to logically organize this, and while the public may be concerned that this is, first of all, it's not moving fast, so you can't even say it's moving fast track.
I know, it wasn't my phrase.
But
It popped up on where do you think it popped up?
other
Popped up.
changes, like the ones the planning commission discussed at its last meeting, are really in a different realm
Yeah,
and
yeah.
bucket. And that also, though, that conversation occurred because council asked for it to occur.
Right.
I think actually, what I mentioned about things like should things be conditional uses or not, or that is likely to be the more immediate types of substantive issues that this exercise precipitates. And council can decide, council could choose to amend the existing code to deal with transit-oriented development and set this aside, or council, as you said, could bring it together. So I think of them as very independent.
Okay. I do too, that's why I was trying to articulate.
But again, it's a hard concept to hold.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's some overlap.
You mentioned standardizing or clarifying how we measure things, and that jogged my memory of when I was on planning commission. One thing that always annoyed me, or the number of things annoyed, were the measurement of a facade and the how you measure a primary facade, and then within a certain number of feet that also counts as a facade, but beyond that is not. And I remember there was at least one submission that tried to take advantage of that in a really crazy way, which, to my mind would be akin to like a loophole. It's a submission that didn't end up getting approved for other reasons, but they had a ostensible tiny facade sort of projecting, and then a more massive facade back where it couldn't be measured. I wonder if that's the kind of thing that we might be correcting, or is that,
Well, I think it might be the kind of thing we would flag, but our goal is not to correct things like that.
Yeah.
And it's hard to resist, but our goal is really just to carry that forward. I mean, to me, the immediate problem is sometimes passages like that are buried like 6 levels down in the hierarchy. And you're reading about some topic and it says, oh, by the way, here's how you measure this. Like, you would never be able to find it. So for me, the first thing is just to bring these out and organize them, and then we can find. And in relation to that, the staff, Kevin Walsh, Chloe Moore, one of our previous planners, there's a very active to-do list of things to fix in the zoning code. Kevin never fails to remind us of that, right? And so I'm pretty sure Chloe had the most, I was going through my files today and I was seeing lists up to about last October of that. So there are a lot of things like that, Councilmember, not just that everyone wants to fix. But we're trying very hard not to slide those in. We're trying we can fix those, but it's a separate exercise. Because if we try to start incorporating those things, we'll never quite know. It'll be very hard to keep track of that all and let you know as council members, like what we've chose to address and what we haven't.
Yeah. Okay, I think we should mostly move on because we have a bunch of other things to talk about. But how do you see these going forward in the future? Would you like come back every month and give us the?
Well, again, just speaking for myself, I would be pleased to do that, but I think that tomorrow, after we meet as a team, maybe the borough manager can reflect on that and suggest how that works, but I'd be happy to come back.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much.
Yeah, I think the team will coalesce a little more tomorrow.
Okay.
Now I understand later in the agenda today, you will be talking about the planning commission again, as in your kind of review of boards and commissions. I just peeked on the wall when I came in here. Did you want me to stay for that?
I don't think so. I think.
It's kind of redundant in
Yeah,
here.
I don't think we need to
Okay,
talk
yeah,
about this.
It's really the
That's
same.
fine, I
It's
just thought I'd
accessory codification. So,
Okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah.
I did print out a current outline. If you
Oh, that would be
I'd
useful.
be happy to pass it out to
Yeah.
you. And I apologize, I didn't print out the memo that Councilmember Gardini provided, but perhaps you could just send it around
Yeah, I'll
to
circulate that.
everybody and then make sure it's handled. I just want to make sure I give you the right things. I think there's 6 copies here. So, okay. It changes every time we work on it, but the framework's basically there. Okay, well, thanks again for inviting me here.
Thank you.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
you all.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
See you tomorrow.
All right. Moving on to our action items. Scheduled bills. Motion for scheduled bills, please.
I'd like to move to approve the schedule of bills for the general sewer, solid waste, capital, highway, and green funds totaling $645,087.35.
Seconded. Okay. Anybody have any questions on the scheduled bills?
Didn't see anything odd.
Going once? All right, all in favor of approving scheduled bills? Great, they are approved or recommended. Okay, B, update to employee handbook.
And we're actually going to do it next month because I don't know when I presented
That's
my
okay.
proposed changes to you guys, but somehow they got lost.
Yeah.
And I now have a Word version that I can stick my comments on, so I'm gonna circulate them all to council
Okay,
for everybody to see. Because
All
the other folks haven't even seen it yet.
next month. Then that's gonna have to get bumped from the business meeting
Yeah,
too, then.
yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
okay?
Maggie
That's
and I
fine,
already
we'll,
talked
Okay,
about it.
yeah,
good.
we'll just go ahead and table that agenda item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, C, 650 Montgomery Ave, closure letter of credit for land development plan. Ms. Dobbs?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is the development up with the Bright Aid. That development is almost fully complete. The building itself is done, it's mostly just the site work that has to be completed. So Panoni was out earlier this month doing a final inspection of all of the punch list items. They did draft a letter with those outstanding items. Some of those items have actually already been addressed since that letter was issued. So we did receive this morning the final punch list items and then an estimate of construction of costs for said final items. What we're asking for tonight is a closure of the letter of credit. The original letter of credit secured by the applicant expires on April 27th. They will not be able to get all of the final punch list items done by April 27th. But because they're nearly there, at this point it's minor grading, site stabilization and landscaping, which we're heading into the best season to get those plantings in, get that stabilization and get that vegetation growth. So we're very optimistic that they will have no problem completing those final items. So we're recommending that rather than have them extend a letter of credit, just to go ahead and have that letter of credit be closed, and then the applicant will provide us then with a cash escrow for the remaining cost of completion for the final punch list items as determined by Pinoni.
And do we have any sense of what that escrow, like how much are we talking about?
Yes, let me pull up that number.
That's good, because I didn't realize that was part of the deal. I was like, I want some money in escrow. My
so-
neighbors very much would like money in escrow for that landscaping completion because they are, I have heard from several of them.
Yes, so the final amount in escrow will be $3,250.
Okay.
It's honestly
Yeah.
very minor landscaping
Okay.
things that are remaining out of this.
Yeah.
So, because that letter of credit is expiring, it doesn't make sense to retain that anymore or have them extend it
Yeah.
for such a small amount. So, staff recommends to go ahead and close out that letter of credit, and then they will go ahead and submit a cash escrow for that $3,250, which we will retain until we complete all of our final punch list items, and we are recommended that can be closed, and that will then be returned to the
Okay.
Great, great.
Cool.
I did
So I
visit-
think you have to, somebody has to move.
Do we need to vote on this?
Yeah, I was going to make
It's
a
a
recommendation, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll move to recommend closure of letter of credit for land development plan for 650 Montgomery.
Second?
All in favor?
Do we know if they have a potential use for the final vacant commercial space?
I haven't actually heard if they have a tenant lined up for that space yet.
All right, D, resolution, motion for resolution 2025-09, sale of police vehicle. Someone say so moved.
So moved.
Second.
All right. This is the,
So this is the old chief's police vehicle, it's an old Crown Vic. It's functionally obsolete at this point, so we are going to just be selling it. Public Works has already gone through and removed all of the wiring and the electronics and the radio transmitters and all of the other things that make it a police vehicle, so it's been stripped down to just a base vehicle. Does not have any sensitive technologies in it anymore. So that's just gonna go up for bid, for sale to whomever wants an old Crown Vic.
Me, I want to get stolen car.
all right, better approve it then. All in favor of that? Yes, approve selling the Crown Vic.
It's cool that we have the in-house knowledge on how to turn it
Back into a
commission it from a police vehicle.
Our Public Works continue to amaze me every day with the breadth of their knowledge and
Do you
expertise.
have to do something with the locks in the back so that people can let themselves out instead of being out with them?
Probably, yeah,
Probably, yeah.
because otherwise that would
Yeah,
be hard for resale.
all right. Okay.
Oh, if you have kids who elope, those childproof locks in the back are
That's true.
not bad.
All right, E, may I have a motion for resolution 2025-12 fee schedule update?
I will move.
Just say so moved.
So moved.
Second.
All right, fee schedule update.
All right, so to touch base then on what this originally started because back in 2023, council passed a motion for an open space fee in lieu. But if you actually read our subdivision and land development ordinance, it says that fee in lieu amount shall be set by resolution. So council shall set by resolution the fee in lieu. This was just passed by motion, and it, for whatever reason, never got formally incorporated into our actual fee schedule.
Yeah.
Nor was it fully, it wasn't adopted then by resolution in a fee schedule. So we are just taking the fee rates that had been approved 2 years ago, so we're not changing the fee at all. The fee was already set by council 2 years ago. We are now just incorporating that into the fee schedule so that it's clear for applicants what that amount is.
I swear we approved a fee schedule more recently. Since
We
I
did
approve
for the
a
whole
fee
year.
schedule.
We did, we just,
The whole list.
yeah, so we adopt a fee
Oh,
schedule.
okay, I got it.
So we adopt a fee schedule every single year. Typically, you adopt one fee schedule at the beginning of the year, but
Right.
there's nothing to stop you from amending the fee schedule
Right.
throughout the year.
Okay.
So again, this is not changing the fee in any way, shape, or form. This fee was already set by council.
Right.
We are now just kind of closing the loop on this, and it is
Okay.
now formally in the fee schedule.
Okay.
All in
The other-
favor? Sorry,
Sorry, there's just
go ahead, sorry.
a couple other quick changes. The other thing, so these are actually gonna be, new, and these are changes
Oh.
that we're recommending,
Yeah,
so.
there's a couple of things.
Obviously, you know that we rent out our borough facilities. We rent out the council room, we rent out the multi-purpose room for groups seeking to use that space for personal events, community events, what have you. So we have two different models for paid rental and an unpaid rental, depending on the nature of the event. That is all in the permit application form. We have our housemen set up for these events. So if you are renting this space for an event and you want to have tables and chairs set up for the event, that is all being done by our housemen. So if somebody rents the hall for an event, our staff spend the time to set the room up in accordance with what the applicant had requested. So when people then don't show up for these events, then they have to take everything down and reset it because other groups are coming in to use the space. So we just wanted to make sure to capture that just because we're spending our time and energy setting up the room, so if people are not gonna call ahead to cancel, if they're not gonna be coming in, we just wanna make sure that we capture any sort of employee time for that.
Are we gonna make them pay a deposit up front and then refund it, like if they don't cancel, or we're gonna go chasing them for the money?
Initially, we were just thinking of sending them an invoice for the money,
Okay.
as opposed to having it be a deposit situation. This really, we generally don't have problems, but there has been a couple of instances recently which.
I just wonder, the greater the likelihood of the no-shows also being no-pays, but maybe not. I mean, I guess we can figure that out. And
Yeah.
we can always, asking for a deposit is more of a burden because the vast majority of people are gonna get their money back. Maybe we could ask for if they have, bank
Well, if they always come
credit
back
card
in and
or
try, if they don't
ACH.
pay and then they come back
Right.
and you reserve it
Right.
again, we can be like,
Yeah, you gotta pay your
pay your
cancellation.
invoice.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, we could ask for a credit card information up front, so kind of like a restaurant reservation, if you
Yeah.
don't show up, then they charge your card,
Yeah.
so we could consider
Yeah.
something like
Just
that.
think about that, maybe,
Um,
if they have one.
Right. So again, this is just to try to capture any sort of
Yeah.
that time that's spent in the event that we have people who don't show up. And then this just kind of clearly articulates whatever cancellation policy would be in terms of time ahead, since, the room is booked pretty regularly. So, we just want to make sure to have that space available for people who will be using it.
Yeah.
And then the final update is our contractor registration fees. So our current our current fee schedule says that the contractor registration fees are $100 across the board. We also have our business privilege tax, which is $10, which you will see further down on the form. That is not changing, but as a matter of practice, we've only been collecting $10 as contractor registration fees, and we're collecting the $100 only for commercial contractor registration fees, plus the $10 for business privilege tax. So this is our way to kind of right-size that. That $10 for the business privilege tax registration, that is actually a pass-through that goes to eCollect, who is our tax collection agency who collects the business privilege tax. So essentially, we're not collecting anything for contractor registrations. And the fact that our fee schedule currently says $100 flat for contractor registration, but we're not actually following that policy for residential contractors. So again, we're just right-sizing this to have a nominal fee. This is very comparable to what other municipalities charge for contractor registrations. The vast majority of our contractors are residential contractors. This will be an annual fee. So we're staying at the $100 for our commercial contractors, and then we're instituting the $25 contractor registration, since again, what we do in practice versus what our fee schedule says doesn't quite align. So we're just right-sizing that for that purpose. So this will go in effect starting Monday through the rest of the year. And again, the BPT, so that $10 registration for the business privilege tax, that is annual. All businesses must do that, and contractors. And then this registration fee similarly will be an annual fee. So again, that part of it remains the same. We're just adding in another tier for residential contractors.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that's the fee schedule update.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? This seems pretty clear.
No.
So let's vote in favor of approving this. Thank you. And last action item is ISG Energy contract renewal. So I'm gonna make a motion for that.
I will move to renew the contract for ISG Energy.
Second?
Okay.
He's supposed to present it to us,
Yes.
so you probably don't have that extended discussion.
Well, so I do actually want to discuss this a little bit because it was brought to my attention that we have a CCA program in the works right now, which is going through some review with the PUC. So obviously that would impact then the contract with IGS. So the recommendations, so our current contract with IGS expires at the end of this year. Graham Liu, who is from IGS, presented earlier this month at the workshop. So the recommendation is that let's go ahead and renew the contract now while the rates are good. We can lock in earlier in the year while we have favorable rates. So the motion for tonight was to consider then having that contract, having a little bit of flexibility so that if the rates are within a favorable amount, that council would authorize me to go ahead and execute on that contract when it's recommended by IGS to lock in the most favorable rate that we expect. The concern then is that if we do in fact move forward with this CCA agreement, that will then mean that we will no longer need the contract with IGS, and so then we would want to terminate that contract with IGS. So I spoke with Graham earlier today to ask what that termination might look like. He said that they would then liquidate the assets. Don't ask me to explain specifically, but they would liquidate essentially, so we would lock in at a rate for a certain amount of energy. If we were to terminate the contract, then those assets would be liquidated. So essentially, it would be if we bought low and when they were liquidated, the price was higher, then there's no penalty to the borough. If we buy low and the price goes even lower, when we liquidate, then we would have to make whole on that difference. So then we would owe them money. The other thing is that we go into a shorter contract agreement with IGS, and then if the CCA gets approved, then we could always defer on the CCA until the contract with IGS comes to its
Delay implementation of the CCA.
delay implementation of the CCA until our contract with IGS is over.
Yeah.
So this actually puts a little bit of a wrinkle into it.
Yeah.
The recommendation again is that, Graham came to us early to say, rates are really good right now. We want you to go ahead and lock in now while things are good. We don't know what's gonna come in the future.
Right.
Things may get lower, things may get higher. It's just, based on their reading of the market, now is a favorable time before we hit kind of peak summer rates.
Yeah.
So that was the recommendation. There's also nothing to say that we have to move on this today. We can delay until May. So those are all the facts on the table, so it's up to you kind of how you want to move forward with this.
Well, we act now, we take advantage of the low rates, right?
Well, not necessarily, we just have a broader window. If we wait till May and they otherwise would have said next week, oh, grab it now, we won't be able to. So I don't see a
Right, so-
downside to
Mm-hmm,
doing it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
because
mean,
it's
you're
just
just creating a
authorization.
bigger window.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They may say, oh, it hasn't hit yet, so it might not make a difference, but I hate to miss a window.
Sure.
I mean, I know my electricity renewal at home comes up in May, typically, and I always seem to have just missed, because I'm watching it, I always seem to have just missed the low point.
Right.
Sort of end of April seems to be, because I don't know, people are anticipating higher energy use once you're into May, by late May, it can be really hot.
I guess we could clarify with the CCA people whether delaying it is, an option. I mean, it seems like it should be though, right?
Yeah, so I did a little bit of digging and I actually have a phone call in with the attorney who's representing the aggregate to further ask those questions. So I wasn't able to schedule anything prior to tonight, but I do have a call in. So I will certainly, find out more information. But, based on the reading that I understand of the agreement that, yes, there is a deferred option that we could then pursue. I mean, it's one of those things that, we signed on to this back 3 years ago. 4 years ago is when the process got started. So for us to kind of
Yeah, we can.
to commit to it and then defer for a period of time is, but it just
I
depends
have
on
to
where we are
believe
in
that
the
other
contract.
municipalities
Yeah.
are also somewhat, they have to be locked in by definition to some energy provider.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a day-to-day contract, but I bet lots of other folks have it, so I just can't imagine
Yeah,
that there's
everyone's
not
gonna
some
need to-
way that everybody's gonna have to get to a contract expiration point before they can jump into the CCA.
I did see that the CCA, the initial petition was rejected, and it has to be
Oh.
appealed, so this is
Okay.
by no
Oh,
means a
so
certain
then-
thing that this is
Okay,
coming.
that's,
Yeah, so, so there's some uncertainty in
Yeah,
terms of the
yeah.
timelines, and then also what the rates might be under a CCA versus
Right.
IGS. Without that hard data, it's
Yeah.
hard for
Yeah.
us to compare the two,
Yeah.
to see which is actually more favorable from a pricing standpoint, and then just realistically from a timeline standpoint.
alright,
So what are we gonna do here? I mean,
I think we can
vote to recommend?
Yeah.
Is that all right with you if we do that?
So you'd like to recommend that we go forth and renew the contract with IGS at a favorable rate?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
So the question then would be in terms of a timeline. I think the idea would be that we would lock in for a 10-year rate of, not 10-year, but a length of contract time more than 12 months. But if we want to hedge and say, well, we think that the CCA is going to be, completed within the next 2 years, because so our contract takes us through the end of 2025, so if we sign a contract that takes us through just the end of 2026, that would mean that we would be looking, that CCA would be approved and on the books and ready to go by the end of 2026. If we don't think that that's going to happen, then we can always increase our contract with IGS for 18 months, 24 months, whatever we think is a reasonable timeline.
And my recollection is the longer the timeline, the better the rate,
Correct.
right? So, I mean, I think 24 months is,
I mean, I kind of do too. I mean, I feel like we ought to be able to, work. If the CCA does come to pass, we work out what our best course of option, either buying out the old contract, or
yeah,
winding it down
Yeah.
some other way.
yeah. I mean, we're not really obligated to jump into the CCA once it's approved. Like,
That's, that's what I
the
mean.
minute it's approved, it's not like we have to be in there, so I don't see a downside. We weigh our options when the time comes. I would love for it to happen sooner, but I think realistically, 24 months makes a lot of sense.
Do we want to leave it a little bit more flexible so that I can engage in that discussion with the
Yes,
attorney
sure.
and with IGS?
Yeah.
So if you feel confident that I can coordinate with all of the players to come up with the most
For an
advantageous
appropriate term.
contract, then
Yeah.
if you want to go ahead and make that recommendation,
I make
then that'll
that,
give me a little bit more flexibility.
Okay.
I motion for that.
Then you have the authority
Okay, so
to
move-
negotiate for an appropriate
forward.
price for an appropriate term
Okay,
at an appropriate moment.
very good.
Okay.
Second.
Second, all in favor of recommending that? Fantastic.
Okay, thank
We are way behind.
I know, that's not, like, talk
We're
fast.
so far behind.
Okay.
Boards and commissions review, Human Relations Commission.
Um,
Anything new?
No, the only question is whether you guys, I had given you a couple of options on things, if you want me to remind you of that now. I had wanted some input before I made my final recommendation.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't gotten a chance. I'll take a look at that.
So, yeah, I mean, we had discussed it here, but I can reiterate to you guys.
Next month.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shade Tree Commission,
Yay,
that's on, awaiting Saldo checklist reformation. Planning Commission, we already talked about. Appointments policy, I have a new draft of the appointments policy. I haven't given you time to talk about it tonight, but I maybe,
Good thing to flag.
I would most welcome more feedback from you, I think, on that, to see whether it's in the right neighborhood.
Yeah, so the main thing that I will just point out is, related to that is the inclusion of the applicants sharing with the chairs of each committee. So typically, this is not something that committees would be involved with. This is a council decision to
Right.
appoint. So by that inclusion, that will kind of step away from general practice as to how municipalities manage appointments policies.
Okay, my thought was that, technically, any resident can give feedback on any item of council business, so if a person saw a list of names, anyone's invited to contact us about any applicant, I think. Just if we made a point of letting the chairs know that there was a pool of applicants ready, they, as residents, might want to give some feedback on it, not like we're taking direction from them or taking formal, a formal report from them or anything, but just to make them aware.
It sounds like this is gonna end up being a discussion point, so we can figure it out.
Yeah, so maybe we just keep that in
Yeah,
mind,
yeah,
and then
okay.
we can circle
Okay.
back around to.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, we'll move on. Cash fund reserve, no update. Administration, CIP building maintenance. This has to do with the sliding door, right?
I think those are on the regular agenda as well.
Yes, it's on the big agenda.
We'll talk about it.
Summer intern.
Can we just talk about it at the business meeting, the sliding door?
Sure.
Okay. Summer intern, same thing?
Yeah, just briefly, we're interested in hiring a summer intern. It would be a part-time, unpaid internship for an undergraduate student to come in and learn the ropes of local government.
Love it.
Sounds awesome.
We already have a couple of projects that we think are really ideal for that skill set.
Hell yeah.
Ongoing projects, I don't think there are any. Public comment, anybody, is there anyone online who's attending this meeting?
One person, no comments.
No comments, okay. Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning? We are adjourned at whatever time this is.
6:54.
6:54. Sorry.